both discouraged and encouraged at the same time. Hi, my name is Meredith. Today's video is going to be me rereading the draft that I wrote from August to October in 2022. This is a rewrite of the first book that I ever wrote and finished. So the point of this is to come up with an editing plan. So this book is 160,000 words and I need to cut it down. That's my main focus. And right now, I'm not going to be looking at anything besides developmental stuff. So plot, character, world building, those are my main focuses. So basically, I'm going to set it up as I have my manuscript Google Doc, and then I'm going to have a separate Google Doc for revision comments that are much more big picture stuff. And just so you as a viewer are a little bit more up to date about what this project is about, so you know what I'm rereading. It's a low fantasy, so industrial era, but it is fantasy, so it's not in the real world. And it's YA, so we have a dual point of view, two teenagers, a girl and a boy. They are trying to tackle a mystery together that involves both of them and their parents. That's the attack plan. And now let's get into the reread. It is January 30th, which is way later than the intro that you just watched. So what I'll say so far is that I've read 3 pages. I know I've done like literally no work on this yet, but already I am so excited about this project. And I didn't know if I would be until I literally just started reading it, because I knew that the first chapter, the whole thing was pants, and it is just to get her to the place where the inciting incident can happen. And I'm like, it's not enough. It's not a hook. It's not good. But literally as I was reading it, I was like, I know exactly how to fix this. I'm just getting this feeling of like, I don't have to fix it all right now. Step by step, I will go through this. I will create a plan and I will execute the plan and it'll be okay. It's January 31st. My reread progress is that I'm on chapter 7. I'm on page 58 out of 317, so I'm making good progress. I only read 2 chapters yet today, but one of them was 7,000 words long. The beginning of this book is, there's so much work to do. And I knew that going into it. I knew that I had some ideas that had changed, but just kind of seeing it in front of my face of like, wow, all this stuff needs to be different was just really shocking. But then we get to chapters like chapter 6, which is the one character's debate, and it's so rewarding. So rather than just seeing red everywhere, I'm like, whoa, this chapter is really good. And I remember pantsing it and one thing clicking into place that spurred on the debate perfectly. And I was like, yes, it still works. It's still so good. I've been thinking about this and stewing on this for months now, and like, I know what needs to happen. I just wish there was like 4 of me to make it happen faster. At this point, there's no reason to be scared of the process. I think there's just like reason to be really excited about a new stage. It's February 1st and I haven't made much progress with the reread. There's just been a lot going on. I feel like I've just been very busy today. Yesterday, I got to like chapter 8 and then I fell asleep and I haven't looked at it since. It's now like honestly kind of late, like 9:30. My plan was to read 5 chapters a day and like take editing notes and stuff. So if I'm only on chapter 8, then I am like 7 or 8 chapters behind. It's bad. But other things also have to happen. Like I have to clean my house, I have to make food, I have to go grocery shopping, like I have to go to my job. These things are unavoidable, inescapable. And on top of that, I'm trying to read a book a week, and so I have like a budget of how many pages per day I'm supposed to read, and so I'm trying to get that done. I'm beta reading for somebody, but it's basically the same job as I'm doing with my own book, which is like a really careful read through and taking like really detailed like developmental editing notes. And so I do that first, and then I like don't have energy left over for mine. Yeah, so I feel busy, but I still have some time tonight. It's not the only thing left on the plate for tonight, but it's basically, I'm gonna move it way up in priority because it is my priority and I need to get through it. So I'm gonna be doing that tonight, and probably the other stuff will not end up happening. I just don't know, you know, life is just busy. Today is Saturday, it's February 4th, and we have good progress on the reread. So I am on chapter 19, but including the prologue, that's 20 chapters. So I am technically halfway through the book chapter-wise. I am further than halfway through word count wise, and that's just because I overwrote a lot of chapters in the beginning. There is lots of good stuff going on with this reread. So first of all, the fun and games was okay. I think that it needs a lot of improvement. There's a lot going on as well with the point of view because I have 2 point of view characters and it switches, and I've established this pattern of like one character than the other, and so anything that I change has to fit into that pattern. So there's a lot to be managed with the point of view. And then I got to the midpoint yesterday and I was so worried about it because I remembered that there was something very wrong with it. I actually just like stumbled on the right way to raise the stakes. And so I fixed the problem with the midpoint. And I'm so happy about that because I was so worried about the midpoint. It was one of those things where I was just dreading it because I was like, I know I didn't do this right on the first go round. So I feel like I've really fixed that problem. I've made notes in a separate document for every chapter, essentially turning into like an editorial letter. So basically an instruction manual to myself about how to go back and fix this. In the heading of every chapter, I'm putting some type of designation about how good it is, basically based on like how much revision is needed. And it goes from rewrite, which is the worst, to needs work, to okay, to good. And so I kind of have that scale, and it's very arbitrary, but I kind of get a feeling of what a chapter is. And so I'm putting that next to it so that every time I get to a chapter, when I'm going through and actually doing the revisions, I can know what I'm in for. And I think that that's really helping me to see like how much work needs to be done just at a very overview glance. The fun part about this is that I am learning to love this process. Basically, how I think about this is the combination of the first 2 stages. So you've got this brainstorming, this overview. You can look at the whole thing and see which parts fit and which parts don't. Now you have the product, and now you can just finally take that product and make it exactly what you were imagining and envisioning the whole time. And it's problem solving, right? Like it's just constantly trying to fit puzzle pieces together. Everything in my life is like, I can't wait to get through this and over this so that I can get to the reread. I'm having a fabulous time. It is February 6th, I believe, and I am sick today. So I'm home from work because I work in person and can't be having sick people running around. So I think I'm well enough to work on my book a little bit, but I just wanted to give updates on yesterday. So I read 4 chapters yesterday. So my emotions for this book go like this, like very much roller coaster depending on what chapter I happen to be reading. The designation of like needs work to good to okay, whatever. When I read a chapter that has like a different designation, that really determines how I feel about the book on a whole, which is why I'm glad that I'm reading straight through the whole thing before trying to do edits and like change stuff, because I feel like once I get to the end, I'm going to have a very different picture of the whole thing than I have right now, because I just read some pretty bad chapters and I'm like, oh my gosh. So the last few chapters that I read were the bulk of the bad guys close in chapters. The main thing I know I need to work on in this section is increasing like the danger level and the conflict and consequences for their actions. That's one thing I need to work on. I've also hit a problem where I have come up with a new like clue for them to investigate. So I want to tie it in, but I just don't have the word count room because I don't know where these 70,000 words to cut are going to come from. Like I have about 5,000 words staked out that I can cut, but that is just not 70. Thinking about adding something in when I have no idea how I'm possibly going to cut that much is just like makes me a little queasy. So I've read 24 chapters, including the prologue. Starting on chapter number 24 today is basically the start of the all is lost. It's when things, it's not quite there, but it's the domino that pushes them into the all is lost. Hopefully my next update will be like, yeah, I did this whole like all is lost darkest moment thing really well, because I remember it being really exciting when I was writing it and I really loved it. So hopefully it works out well. I don't know. I'm gonna go find out and I will let you know. It's February 7th. Yesterday, I had a very productive sick day and I read 6 chapters of my book. So these chapters were spanning the all is lost, dark night of the soul, and aha moment for both of my point of view characters. So this is really intense stuff. Like it's very emotional. There's a lot of information reveals and it's very high stakes, tension, danger. It's like really good stuff emotionally. All the problems that I was mentioning in yesterday's update about like the lack of danger and stakes, like that's cured the minute we get to the all is lost, which is great. But then a new problem appears when we get to the all is lost, which is that basically the information overload is like too heavy. So yeah, you're supposed to have reveals at the end and stuff, but like I think it's too much. And so what I need to do is start revealing things earlier, spread the information out throughout the whole book. That's a huge challenge to basically sort through the clues, figure out which ones are actually necessary. I feel like they're all necessary, but I'm sure that's not true. The tricky part is executing the web in the most effective way of, you know, having the right clues at the right time, having just enough, not having too much, right? So it's like this balancing act, and it's very delicate. And I know that I didn't do it perfectly on the first try, even though most of this stuff had been plotted. But I mean, I will say there's a lot of stuff that wasn't planned that I pantsed in there, but that's to be expected in a first draft. So definitely a dual nature in the way that I'm feeling about this, which is completely overwhelmed and feeling like this might be a very long process to get this where it needs to go, but also knowing that I have all the raw materials that I need. Like, it's all there. I just need to organize it a little bit better. And then last but not least, problem I ran into is that there's a whole scene that I love. I literally love it, but I know it's a killed darling. I just know it. It's just one of those things where I'm like, this is the only expendable clue I have found so far. It's the only one I can cut. So I have to cut it because that's the only way I'm ever going to get this down to any semblance of publishable, right? Like, I feel like even 120,000 is like a reach for me at this point, but even that is like, what publisher would take that? I don't know. Anyway, this is an emotional roller coaster. It's not a rewrite, but boy, it's just gonna take some massaging at the very least. Today is February 9th, and I finished the reread. So I actually finished it yesterday, last night, pretty late, and I didn't want to film. I just wanted to kind of take it in and think about what had just happened. Let's recap everything that I've been thinking about throughout this process. In short, there's a lot of work to be done. In long, I really love the project and am happy to do the work. I think there's just more to it than I thought at first, because it is really heavily pantsed in a lot of places, and that shines through. The lack of continuity shines through, and just the kind of throwing new ideas at the wall, and also, like, you know, half of the story has one element and the first half doesn't because I pantsed something in right in the middle or right at the end. And so there's these things that need to be like rewoven throughout the whole story, and there are parts that need to drastically change. But what I actually was really impressed with was the ending. I have some chapters after the actual finale, and those chapters tie everything up. There's a lot more intrigue after that, and I think those chapters are really, really, really strong. And so that was encouraging to me because, you know, I came away with the book after finishing reading it feeling like, wow, there's really something great here. And I didn't feel that way when I was in the midst of the finale, but the ending is really, really strong. And so I feel like because I have such a strong ending, I think I can really work strongly backwards and incorporate all of those elements that come together back into the rest of the book. So what does this look like going forward for me with this project? My attack plan had been that I was going to make all these notes, come up with basically an editorial letter to myself saying all the things that needed to be fixed in every chapter, which I basically have now because I wrote it basically as I went through the book. I think the book is still too complex to actually just follow an editorial letter and make good progress. I think I need to pull back and do a lot of big picture thinking. So basically that means going back into a brainstorming phase, which is crazy because I did not want to have to do that again after doing that for months in the summer of last year. But there are a couple loose ends that I'm like, I really just need to have everything solid before I go in and revise everything. If I go through the manuscript and just revise what I know, if I then brainstorm after, I may change things so drastically that that work will be wasted. So I need to do the brainstorm beforehand and then go into the edits. One thing I'm worried about with this is the idea of perfectionism, which I don't struggle with that much because I'm kind of just a messy writer. I'm just like, whatever, get it all out there. But now I'm getting into the part where I'm like, I really want to do this well now. Like, I really would like to just do something well in one go and like stop pantsing this thing. And so the struggle will be, when is enough planning enough? And when can I jump into edits and be reasonably assured that I'm not going to waste a lot of my time, but that I'm still learning and that I may waste some time going down a wrong avenue, or maybe I'll come up with a better idea and scrap some work that I've done. So I know that I need to keep planning, but I know that I can't just plan this forever and not actually get into the edits and the changes. So that's going to be a balance. I'm so much closer is the thing that I want to actually take away from this. I'm so much closer than I was months ago, than I was a year ago, than I was a year and a half ago, than I was when I first conceived this idea. This story just keeps growing and changing, and it is good for it. Well, thank you so much for watching my process of rereading this book. I hope that you enjoyed watching me do it. Stick around as the saga continues, as this book continues getting shaped up and, you know, becomes something that I always hoped that it would be. And it's come a long way, as have I. Happy writing, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.